Show up, Leroy.
Wow.
We're here with Joe Miller and Thanos Crocker.
Oh man, that's
hurtful. I haven't even seen the movie, and I know that's an ouch.
Wow, that's a spoiler alert for that one.
Spoiler alert!
I didn't know he was related to Ward, so that's like a whole thing. Well, we are live.
Are we live?
We are live.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was about ready to start without you, except whenever you'd open the door and like wash out the image, and I said that would look bad. So
you
I
really
decided
cut
not to
everybody
do
a
it. Yeah.
So we sat here impatiently waiting for you. So
Ward Crocker came in at least 20. Well, he came in exactly 22 seconds before we were supposed to go live. So he was really on the ball.
Well, the reality is, some of us work.
Oh.
And what's your excuse? You put yourself up for that one. You know,
some of us work.
That's a nice change for you, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow, that's hurtful.
So,
that's hurtful.
Speaking of Thanos, how are you? No, actually, we were having this conversation about your mentality, and we talked about how Thanos and Darth Vader are the same.
Okay.
They are very goal-oriented persons, fictional ones. They don't let emotion get in the way. Dreadfully rational and logical. And they kill you, but they don't kill you for sport. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Darth Vader's a pretty emotional dude, though. If you see the last one, he was like angry.
Well, they're making him that way now, but in the beginning, he wasn't. He was more like
So what's the problem? What's the problem with him?
Of course, he would ask that question. What's the problem with him?
They're logical and
yes,
not based on emotion.
Dreadfully, but see, they make emotions.
Right.
They lessen emotions as if they're
Spock
weaker.
on steroids.
Spock had no reason.
Without morality.
Spock had no reason to be nice, right? He had no reason. He just was that way. They gave you the false impression that just because you're dreadfully logic doesn't means that you're nice and not evil.
Well, it could be logical to be nice.
Could be in some situations, but in other situations, it could be logical not to be nice or evil.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
There it is.
That's his philosophy, which is essentially dehumanizing. But that's another point that we'll probably get to. I want to actually start with. Oh, do you have something?
I have a fun fact. I have a
fun one before we get into the series.
Yeah, I have a fun fact.
I have a serious
this is
conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I know.
But it's always nice to have a
You guys are always so serious.
Wow. I know,
Seriously?
Right?
So,
because we're not driven by
recently, I should have used that 22 seconds before it started to find out. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Intense show prep. 22 seconds of show prep. Ward Crocker's ready.
Bam! But there's a guy from Missouri high school. Sometimes people get kicked out or they do something wrong, and this guy was not allowed to graduate. All right. Well, to attend his graduation.
Okay.
All right. So he was denied that because he blew it. Well, there's a variety of different reasons that people do that. Well, he did something. Here's what.
It's kind of really silly to make him prevent his graduation.
You got that right. Yeah. He decided to. He was banned from student graduation. He decided to post. This is Kylan Scheel, I think his name is pronounced. 18 years old, from Truman High School in Missouri. Here, he posted his high school on Craigslist for sale for $12,725.
He's going to sell the whole high school. And they banned him for that?
Well, kind of. I mean, to be fair, that's yes, but it's part of what he said in here. He posted it as, hey, it's a huge 20-plus room facility, newly built football field, huge parking lot. So all these perks, and all that's all well and good. Well, here's the problem. Now, you guys tell me what you think about it. Here's the problem. Here's what bigger than normal dining room. It's just it was awesome, right? Here's the phrase he put in here that was problematic. Reason for sale is due to the loss of students coming up.
Due to the loss of students coming up?
Well, clearly that means someone's going to die. He was people took that as a potential threat.
I was thinking it meant like there was a declining student
population.
I was thinking
graduation.
Like the incoming freshmen.
No, graduation.
Yeah, graduation.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Well, some people took that as in he was an A student who got in trouble.
He's just talking about graduation.
Yes, he was talking, and he apologized for he can't apologize. They would not budge. Now here's the issue. Anyway, by the way, because not everyone took it as a joke, they took it real. It led school officials and the police department. They spent significant hours tracking down the source. They even issued a subpoena, emergency subpoena against Craigslist to find out who this was, to be able to track it down and to make sure there wasn't a problem. Okay, which, in light of some situations, okay, but really? Here's what they said. A student who makes a real or implied threat, whether it is deemed credible or not, will face discipline. My question is this: implied by whom? This is authorial intent.
Mm-hmm.
It's an implied. If you read it into it, if it's not there, this is what happens when you dismiss authorial intent. They should have retracted. Okay, we did our research. You know what? There was no implied intent. That's not what he wanted. It was a joke. We know this student. It's not a problem. But they still apparently went through with it, and he apologized, according to his mom.
Well,
so,
and this is actually the problem with a lot of things. And actually, this ties into my serious topic, believe it or not.
okay, all right, there you go.
And then the question I had for you guys, because the problem is, it's not just authorial intent, which is legit,
Right.
but it's also that superior to our authorial intent, or what counts more, is
How we feel.
Reader perception,
Response.
reader
Right.
feeling.
Well, that's authorial.
Yeah.
Now authorial intent becomes
That is
reader
a-
intent.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
Right.
it's like,
Reader response is a hermeneutic is a legitimate, not a legitimate hermeneutic, don't get me wrong in that, but there is a hermeneutic called reader response where the words are allowed to mean what they mean, but our real concern is how the readers respond or feel about what they read.
Which we can totally predict.
That is A.C. Thistleton
Right.
to the core.
yeah.
See that?
So
Nice quote there.
I know.
So this
man.
gets to the idea, this existentialism, sort of like everything begins with me and ends with me kind of thing. And
No,
Well,
me.
well, me.
no, not me.
No,
me,
no.
me, yeah.
Aw.
So here's I was on Facebook. Now this is actually a post that was made by a longtime friend. So I'm not going to say any name or anything like that. I don't know.
Legal.
They have,
I beat you to it.
no, because I was going to say they have listened to the show before, so that excludes. Well, you sleep through them, so that would exclude you
He's a little
potentially.
sharp today. He's a little sharp today.
Yeah.
Woo!
Wow.
So, and somebody that's love is as a human being, a friend and stuff. So I'm not looking to make fun of this person at all, but I do think it
I am. What's the name?
struck me.
Also.
Yeah. No.
He's not talking about his wife, is he?
Leroy Hill. Margie Hill. Margie Hill.
Margie. Oh.
Shh, don't say it though. But Corey Marsh.
That's it. Yeah.
That's who it is.
Corey Marsh.
That's who it is.
That's who it
Corey
is.
Marsh.
No, so it's tough because when I read this, it struck me how we as Christians, we are good at discerning, in an apologetic sense, topics that we have a moral position on, and we call it out. Oh, you're yelling, your emotions determine this, or whatever. We'll call that out. But our problem is not being able to discern it in the world as much as, although that's a problem, but I think more significantly, what I realized in this post is we don't discern it in our own theology, in our own way we interpret Scripture. I think that's actually, maybe becoming a bigger issue than not seeing the world for what it is.
I have a phrase for this.
Yeah,
It's good. It's a good phrase.
See if you can see if it applies
All right.
to it as I read this.
And you know it. I used it with you a couple weeks ago, and you're like, "That's a good one."
Say it ahead of time. Actually, we'll see if it
Comfort theology.
comfort theology. It might be this. Yeah. That might be it. Like comfort food. Comfort
Right.
theology.
Exactly what I related to comfort food. We have our comfort thing, and that's how we're going to interpret.
That might actually be a great word. Let's see. Here's the bumper sticker-ish sort of meme post. It says, "I was worthless until he made me priceless." He being Jesus. "My value came when he bought me with his life."
You already had value.
Digest that.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What's your first take on that?
is kind of bogus.
Why do you say that? And what makes it bogus?
Well, when he says,
I mean, it sounds beautiful, right? Oh, so beautiful.
It
I was
certainly
worthless
does.
until he made me priceless. It just sounds like
Right. Yeah.
You know.
It's a good stamp. Rubber
And
stamp
I
thing.
saw
So,
tons of likes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like nobody had any critique of it. Just that was beautiful. That was beautiful, motivational. It's all about Jesus, and Jesus is awesome, and here's how wonderful he is because he died for me, which is all true. He died for me also.
Right.
But the focus was so much on what Jesus had done that it missed another point. But go ahead, Leroy.
the person, well, there is a truth in that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because not everything is beautiful to everyone. And there's a truth where it says that value is in the eye of the person who.
Somebody actually left a comment similar to that, by the
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
It wasn't me.
No, it was not you.
No.
It was not Clear
Because then
Marshall.
it would have been pretty awesome if it was me.
Yeah.
Because so. Go ahead. You go ahead. I
Okay.
have some thoughts, but go ahead.
You're trying to be nice. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you have to work at it. So.
He's just on today.
He's on fire.
He's on
Wow.
fire. Wow.
Okay.
That's what 4 days off will do.
That's Actually, did relax a little bit this weekend.
That's right, you did. You mentioned
Yeah, I
that.
did actually have some relaxing.
Oh, man. Got your
he's
mind
Ready to go, baby.
It's like, I'm back.
He's been eating his fast
He's
this
back,
weekend.
baby.
Woo.
Brain's
Okay.
working.
Well, if we were worthless before, then what was there a value for God to die for?
Exactly.
And so, what happens to the image of God in man? Does sin wipe out the value of it?
Yeah.
And now become, for it to be worthless to priceless. There's a value in everyone. It's just there's a problem, and the problem is not no value. That's not the issue. So
Well, they're first of all, it's not biblical. First of all, that's just one of those poetry things that sounds good, but it's no biblical value within it because
It's a great meme, but not necessarily founded in substance, which is a
Right.
concern. But
the
we'll
the,
get
real,
to
the,
that,
the
too.
beginning issue is when God, if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, when God created us, He said that we were very good, right? So
Yeah.
I mean that has to mean something in the very
Yeah, so I asked. Here's my
okay.
first question that I
Okay.
asked, because I tried to take a more Socratic approach to this. Ask questions,
Sure.
questions.
Right.
Realized it kind of wasn't going anywhere, and just finally said, "Here's what I was kind of thinking," and let it go because it didn't go anywhere. But my first question was, help me understand this. Are you saying that prior to your personal salvation, like until you accepted Jesus, you had no value
Right.
because you were worthless until He paid the price for you personally? And this friend said, "No, I don't mean it as like a personal thing. It's just So I said, "Well, then
It's
are you
an
saying
ephemeral thing.
no human life had value prior to the cross 2,000 years ago? So everybody prior to that had no value? Or are you saying it's a historical event that gave human life value?" And so this was the ultimate response. I'm speaking of a revealed truth that I came to understand just how valued I am through the work of the cross. It's not a theological statement.
Yes, it is.
So there's several problems with that one.
Yeah, yes, it is. So, but
Well, first of all, it's about God, so it's theology. Yeah,
exactly.
I didn't even bother to address that.
Right. I mean, it's okay that he came to realize it. That's different than what is it he realized. So-
Yes, that's exactly to the point of it.
Okay, so-
Yes,
yeah.
it
Okay, so-
connects to your story.
Right.
So I said this because I realized the questions weren't advancing it, because there was just I'm not valuing the emotive, feeling quality of what's being said. Therefore, I'm just
you're Thanos.
Yeah, I'm being a terrible person because I.
Right.
No, not that anybody said that, but you could just sense that there's no openness to this exchange. So I said, so if I'm understanding your meaning, here is how the statement should read. My added words I put in all caps. I said, I thought I was worthless until He showed me I am priceless. My value was revealed when He bought me with His life. Because what I'm doing
right,
is,
yeah.
and so what I'm
Right.
saying is,
That's good.
I'm trying to value that revelatory moment you had, but the value was already there in who we were.
Right. Exactly right.
So
It's just that you didn't see that value, and there's a difference.
Awareness. Yeah.
This statement originally was one of, it was one of being, of necessity. It was a metaphysical thing. There is no value in my life until Jesus did this thing.
I heard you say her, by the way.
Yeah.
So I know it's
fine.
female.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the royal her. It's the,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't assume gender just because I said her, though. I mean, that's...
She, he.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-oh. The need of the hour. Interesting.
Yeah, the topic needed. I guess that's, I mean, it is really needed. But, so anyways, so that's what I was looking at. I was like, look, you can still take your moment of saying, I realize this,
Right.
Or saying even you felt worthless is one thing. But to then say ontologically, sort of, there was no value in my life until Jesus did this, is a different statement.
Exactly. Right.
But that was, and the thread went on a couple of things. It was just sort of like, whatever. She responded to this, or sure, like okay, there's no issues with that.
Right.
But see, this is what I got is like, this is a person who, in all other areas of theology, in terms of practice, would recognize, okay, that just because a woman feels like she doesn't want the baby doesn't mean the baby has no
really?
life.
So this person understands all those things.
Is what exactly. This person would say, look, they're a strong pro-life person. Well, just because a woman feels like it's my body, no, that doesn't determine the value of the baby's life.
So
that doesn't do that.
She just hasn't made the connection in this part here. So we're all prone to that. Yeah.
That was my thing.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
I think as Christians we have to be careful that it's like these issues, they're all connected.
Right. Not just them, it's us.
It's not just them.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's
was
good.
my big takeaway from this is I think that as Christians we're willing to say that the other person, your feelings can't determine reality, and sort of gender ID and all stuff. Well,
Sure.
just your feelings doesn't change your biology or something. We can acknowledge all that stuff and we'll argue it and whatever. But then when it comes to our feelings about our faith, sometimes we're not very consistent there.
Because my point about this statement was it was self-centered. It was really rooting the knowledge of value within self rather than it being the self having an intrinsic worth, because God created it in His image, right? The person has an intrinsic worth because God created that person in His image, regardless of whether I recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And
that was what I was trying to get to.
And that's
in this thread is that the value. Yeah, go ahead.
That statement. I think you guys hit it. I think it's a result of us Christians today having imbibed the world system. I think you would want to put it that way. I want to put it that way. The world system, where everything is rooted, even value, even worth, even beauty, is rooted in the person. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. Nothing has an intrinsic value in and of itself that is outside of me or sacred. We talked about it last week. Sacred.
Yeah.
And when the moment we say that it's sacred, we're saying that it's something that makes it sacred, that sacralizes it, and that something is a someone that sacralizes or makes the person sacred. So my value, even when I don't feel it, is not rooted in how I feel.
Yeah.
It's rooted in because this is what I've been made in God's image.
And we have to be really careful here. And this is what my big aha moment in reading this is realize that, how easy this is to happen is just because we put Jesus on it
doesn't mean
just because
you put a ring
doesn't
on it
change the fundamental flaws we can make.
Right. Doesn't mean He showed up.
I mean, yes. I mean, it's like everyone. It's like try to find Jesus in every verse of the Bible. Well, He's not there.
He's not there.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean it's less. That verse has no value.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly.
It just means it has a value on its own for whatever it's intended to be.
Mm-hmm. As Scripture.
And so this is, Scripture has value because it's the Word of God written. It's the Word of God spoken and recorded, and we have that. Mm-hmm. Here's that same sort of fallacy, I think, where the only way to give value mean to anything is to point it to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think we're doing God a favor. We think we're helping our theology. We think we're helping Jesus out by pointing everything to Him, when this issue goes back to creation, to Genesis, to who we are, who we're made, and what it means to be made in God's image of sacred value and worth. And I get the emotive thing that she was driving at here. Emotion. I didn't feel I had value until, but you've got to say it that way, because you can't state it as, this ontological fact that I had no value. I was worthless until what Jesus did on the cross, because that's just not true.
So what you're saying is that the words that we use and what they actually mean are significant. We have to be careful how we wordsmith, how we use words. It's not just what we say. Well, it's not just what we mean by what we say. It's also what we say.
Yes.
How what we say reflects what we mean.
Yeah.
Right. And we have
because
to make sure.
We can mislead others. We can lead them down the wrong path. Because, see, my fear in this, when I read this post, is that, look, what that's saying to people is that, look, to a non-believer, does that mean, on its face, I know that that's not this person's heart, but on its face, that means you have no value until either, one, you're a believer,
right,
or human race didn't have value until Jesus died 2,000 years ago.
That person would probably never say it to another individual.
Oh, no.
There's no way. They inadvertently,
because in order to say that, they would really know the weight of the words that they put together in the first place, which we don't think that they...
No, and I know this person, I mean, she'd never think that or say that, but that's why I tried to drive at through questions to see the connection between, I know what this person's thinking is, to the actual statement, to see where they were disjointed. I know that this is, it sounds like a great meme, it's a great bumper sticker-ish type of thing, and it sounds beautiful poetically, but it wasn't reflective of, I don't think, what this person's theology, or many Christians' theology, would be when it comes to the nature of human sacredness and value. Again, but just because we feel a certain way doesn't justify, any sort of word usage we have. We have to be careful because we're holding the world to that standard.
Sure.
When we have other things.
That's exactly true. That is exactly the fact, is that we are holding the world accountable for its inaccuracies with respect to how it articulates value for a baby in the womb, for example.
Yeah.
And we want the world, people in the world, to be precise in their justifications or detractions. Particularly in that case, and we ought to be the same as well. I mean, we're not above the standard that we ask other people to hold themselves to.
Now, do you find that who do you run across that is concerned about the accuracy of such terms, phrasing? What kinds of Christians or people who? And there's a reason I'm asking that.
What kind of
Christians? What do they do?
Christians
are no, sir, but no. I mean,
you're talking about Christians, people
who are more academically minded.
Yeah.
Are they the only one? I mean, are they the predominant ones, or whom?
I would say yes.
I was always accused, like prior to even my involvement in seminary, because of my background was in engineering. I remember one time, this is a true story, a church...
Because you only tell true stories.
That's true. Unless they're fake stories, then they're fake ones. But when they're true...
Well, he said some things about you.
Yeah. Those are all true.
Those are all fake.
Well, I was when I was in college, came back home and to my parents' church, and they had rolled over a pastor, the United Methodist tradition, so that they
rolled them over,
around, they roll over people, moving, kind of whatever. So this new guy had come in and listened to a sermon he was given, and nothing he said directly seemed wrong. It's just something didn't seem right.
It was vague.
So I'm 18 years old,
right?
Maybe 19. I think I was 18 though, and I scheduled to meet with this guy in his office, and I was sitting in his office and found out he was raised by sort of his Mormon grandmother, and one of the things he believed that is Jesus wasn't God, that he was so this was his Jesus is not God was his statement. So I'm thinking this is probably bad in the Christian church.
You think? All right.
You think? So steamrolls, kind of snowballs in this big thing. Eventually, the district superintendent of the district where I was at in Pennsylvania comes, and they have this big meeting, and they're in this room with the district superintendent, the pastor of the church, and several other supporters of the pastor.
Got the man fired.
No.
Oh, no. My gosh.
So I'm out there in this other room with my parents and a few other people. I'm the only person probably under 40 that's even involved in this thing. And And we're like, why are we not a part of this meeting? What does it mean? So we crashed the meeting. We all end up sitting around this table, and we're having this thing. And somebody turns to me and says, one of the people says to me, well, you're an engineer, so, you can't put everything in a box like you can as an engineer. Not everything fits in a box. And I said, look, this isn't complex sentence diagramming. This is exactly that. This isn't complex sentence diagramming. He said, Jesus is not God. I'm not reading much into that. I don't think it takes an intense amount of thought to realize that's not biblical. And of course, my Sunday school teacher, who used to be my Sunday school teacher, was at the end. She's like this older gal. She just turns over and says, like, why can't we all just love the Lord? And so, so who are the kind of people? Well, I mean, I know, I apologize. Engineer, any kind of like sciencey minded people get accused of at least being overly concerned with the words and not mattering. So all that story to say, I got that before I had any theological education as an engineering person.
You just caused trouble in this whole church. This whole church blew up after that.
No, the church split. The guy stayed there. He was fine. He was good to go.
Wow. I thought you were going to say that they made you wanted to have you apologize to them.
I was in the wrong. I was in the wrong, and
no. See,
I was perceived as in the wrong by these people.
I can believe that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know you.
Yeah. Yeah. Always misunderstood.
It just wasn't that issue, but there was something. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, that's interesting because I mean we're grading papers, this week and looking at the terms that people use, and so phrasing matters. And one of the things that we push, we say, hey, what you articulate is important, and be able to clarify concepts because, like J.P. Moreland, he said that the difference between a good mind and a great mind is the ability to be able to distinguish concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think he's absolutely right. That's always stuck with me when he said that. It was just fantastic, and we push that for our students too.
I would just add to distinguish and communicate that difference. I mean, because great mind, a good mind can distinguish them. But even greater, somebody who can distinguish and communicate that significance of that difference.
Stop talking about me.
Well, I didn't want to say it directly, but
so funny.
Yeah. No, anyway, because that was my Facebook
I think,
moment.
But. I think though what you're hitting on in a very broad concept is, I was telling Professor Crocker here that people don't read anymore. Your average person does not read anymore. They get most of the things they understand they get from movies. They get it from television.
Yeah.
They get it from the news, and that's the real issue. YouTube. I mean,
yeah.
We're just being honest. That's the real issue.
Snapchat.
That's the real.
I'm not kidding. I'm 15 seconds of whatever. That's news.
The real issue is that people aren't thinking as deeply. The whole nation isn't thinking as deeply about issues and has a base of knowledge. And what I mean by base of knowledge is that there's just, this base of facts that we all know. Like, for example, we all know that George Washington, was the first president of the United States, right? I mean, this base of knowledge that we all knew that we could draw upon, when people say things. And I think it's so bad right now that people are just taking in by just the easiest meme. A meme came up, and it was pretty popular among my friends, where they depict Tebow kneeling and Colin Kaepernick kneeling, and say that white America is not upset that this quarterback is kneeling, but they weren't upset when Tebow kneeled at the national anthem.
Yeah.
But they were upset that Colin Kaepernick kneeled at the national anthem, and this is supposed to prove racism on their part, except for the simple fact that Tebow never kneeled.
Yeah, he never knelt during the
national anthem. I mean, if you just remove that fact, I mean, that's all true, I suppose. What I mean?
If you just ignore
the fact. If you ignore all the evidence to the contrary,
it's a great meme. It's a great meme. But I saw that post retweeted, I think 20 times this weekend, and not a single person who tweeted it took the time to ask the question, did Tebow ever kneel at the national anthem?
Right.
Yes.
And it's bad.
You see that a lot on Facebook interactions where people just post stuff and everyone reacts against it.
Even major news like media, like what they did with Trump with the photos of kids at the border and stuff like that. Yeah. They have those photos came from the Obama administration.
Oh yeah,
under
2014.
him. Yeah, 2014, and they said, well, look what Trump is doing to these kids, and they're whatever, and it's like, well, it's only 4 years old, and someone else that you like was someone who had those that happened to them.
Yeah.
But they don't care.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And will argue you down for daring to draw out the truth of it.
Yeah, and that's really the disappointing point of it all is that, like, if you say, well, let's correct this point on this, not to say that there might still be a larger point, but let's first get our facts right before we start making all these conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just don't want to do anything. It's the society is either you have to be on one extreme or another. Either you're 100% behind something or you're 100% hate it.
Yeah.
You can't have a nuanced response to anything.
Oh.
There's an article on the Hill when you were saying that, and I won't go into details on this one, but it's interesting. It said the title says "Freedom of Speech is too sophisticated a concept for today's liberal students," and it goes into some of these recent issues where somebody was invited to speak and they were talking about these women's issues and how women and just the idea they're saying women and men are different, and all these students get up and they walk out and they throw pies and they just protest and this is somebody who's it's not a Christian saying this, it's not even somebody arguing for men and women having different roles or something you'd think would be a controversial subject. They're just saying that there's differences and distinctions between men and women and biology. It's a total naturalistic
Concerning the fact that there really is
thing. Well, this woman actually at this one event, she was actually said, women lactate for giving birth and stuff, and so these kids got incensed. Boo, boo! You're saying that there's a difference. She's just talking about pure biological differences,
right.
And that was offensive. And these students had to get up and protest and leave and walk out. Frightening.
I told a friend of mine this morning, we're having this conversation in the work. I said, there's a difference between the classical liberal and these neoliberals today. The classical liberal you could argue with. You had the same set of facts about the world. You had the same set of ideas about objective reality, truth, and all these other sorts. We may disagree on some issues, but at least we were dealing with the world as it really was. These folks today characterize speech as violence.
Yeah.
Now, I say to people all the time whenever you get have a conversation with people, you better start taking people seriously when they make statements. You better listen to what people say, because I think people are serious. And I said to my friend this morning, I said, I can see how the people who make the statement that speech is violence, why they turn to violence. I can see why, because in their mind, they believe you're doing damage to them or you're doing violence to them. And the only response in their mind, in their craziness, is violence.
Fight fire with fire.
Fight fire with fire.
If you're violent to me, I justifies my violence to you.
And I said to my friend this morning, you better start taking people seriously. And I said, and I'm being totally honest, I have no tolerance for those people whatsoever. None, and what I mean by that is I'm not angry with them, I'm not trying to fight them, I'm not trying to do violence with them, but I'm not going to spend time arguing with them, because there is no more arguing with them. The reason why they're in the position as they are is they've rejected argumentation, because argumentation militates against their views.
Yes. Well, argumentation is violent.
It's violent.
You just simply have to accept or reject.
I'm going to reject it, and we'll deal with the consequences. And I think, and I've said this in a lot of, I hope that I'm not speaking out of turn, not with you guys, but I've said this to a lot of my friends who are white and black. My hope in America...
Both, like, the friend is white and black?
They're white, they're mixed.
Oh, friends that are white or friends that are black?
No, I'm saying both.
I understand.
But I've said to my friends, there's going to come a time in America where reasonable people are just going to say, we need to just leave these people alone. They remind me of the dwarves in The Last Battle, where the dwarves could only say, the dwarves are for the dwarves.
It's not about the Lord of the Rings.
No, this is Narnia.
Oh, Narnia.
The last battle in Narnia, the dwarves had gotten taken advantage of so bad by... and were fooled that they only said, no more. The dwarves are for the dwarves. So when the last battle broke out, you had the good fighting the bad. The dwarves started shooting at everybody. It didn't matter for the dwarves, because that's exactly who these people are. They're the dwarves, and they're for themselves. And I'm just saying, you have to start thinking in these terms, because that's where these folks are. It's not going to be people on the right who are going to reel them in, who are going to reel them back to reality. It's going to be people on the left rejecting that view and saying, You people are in a different stratosphere.
Yeah, the problem there is though that it's you have everything is through this political framework.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's if you're either for a Republican or you're for Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no in between. You can't say it's why Trump, God bless him, but why he won't apologize for stuff, because he knows that as soon as he apologizes for something, any kind of weakness is taken as destruction of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Democrats that do the same kind of thing. It's like there's no retraction of anything, because any step backward is to admit complete defeat.
And his enemies will make sure.
Yeah.
Even when he doesn't say anything wrong, his enemies will characterize what he said, even though it was right, as wrong.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Trump is in a different... I can honestly say I like Trump and I don't like Trump. I like Trump because I like any man that will stand for his convictions. I like any man that will stand for his convictions because there's so few men that stand for what they believe in.
He's
or
not
woman. I was using man in the classical sense that means all of mankind.
Classic privilege sense.
Personkind.
No, it's mankind.
Humankind.
It's mankind.
No, the word man is inhuman.
Man is inhuman.
So you don't even see it because you're blinded.
You're blinded by the blinded by the light.
Blinded by your privilege.
I love blindness.
So I'm just saying, I like Trump in that. Don't get me wrong. Trump says things that are absolutely insane. He's just not thinking.
Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe he is thinking, but you just.
Well, he's a classical. I mean, Trump is he has a liberal progressive worldview with some politically conservative ideas.
He's the average.
But his worldview is very much more the liberal / progressive in how he sees life, how he sees the way to win arguments, to win debates. He just basically adopts those liberal progressive tactics. He just has now brought them to the Republican / conservative side. And that's the only unusual thing about Trump, is that it's not that what he's done is unique, it's just that bringing it to that side of the political spectrum is unusual. Because normally it's only been on the Democrat side, but it's not anything new.
Mm-hmm.
The idea. So that's what's scary too. And this is where I said it's like you're for or against. So those who are Republicans who should be saying, no, this is not acceptable. This language or this use is not acceptable. They won't say it because he gets beat up for the stuff that they also want to happen.
But do you think? But do you think that they won't say it because they're? I think in some senses most people are sitting back and saying, this is the kind of person that you want. I mean, in other words, the liberals, when they get in office, they are the absolute. And I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, when they get in office, it is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to fight that, people. This is why I look at it. People have said, because you guys know I wasn't for Trump in the beginning, but people have said if that's how they really want to rule, we're going to put somebody else in there like them that is going to rule exactly like that.
It is. It's pragmatism.
It is.
It's absolutely.
That's quintessentially American.
Yeah. It's very
Do you
pragmatic.
like that quintessential? Are you awake?
I'm awake.
Are you awake? Blinded by the light?
You use a word like quintessential and it barely even moved you. I don't think you're awake to hear that awesome word dropping.
I'm so sorry, man. I should have just said hallelujah.
Yeah, that's what we need to hear.
All right. I'll do a couple hallelujahs for you.
But please.
Oh, hallelujah!
No, that's not how they do it in the hood.
Oh, how do you do it in the hood?
I'm not going to do that.
Oh, come on.
I'm not going to put on a show for the man.
Oh.
You're not going to cast this pearl before swine.
Oh, I so want to make
I'm not going to put on a show for the man. What are you talking about?
Hey, good news is you're the man.
You're the man.
You're the man. He just admitted it. Oh, wait, no, that's in the bad sense of you're the man, not the good sense. I get so confused.
You know, it is so funny. It is. I honestly wish that the average person could hang around people who are just not uptight about race at all. I really do.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely it's the only way you can actually make fun.
You and I joking back and forth. My wife hates it.
I know she does.
And she used to, but yeah. So,
but it's the only place when you're around people whose views and whose worldview you can take as it's real and it's genuine. And we're all poking fun at this because that race doesn't make sense to the average, to the normal person. It just doesn't make sense. We're all the same. Well, I'm better than Ward, but you know.
But that has nothing to do with skin color.
Well, Ward roots for the Cowboys, and I've proved.
Yes, it was sports.
Yes, but the point is, you just can't. You can't be so uptight about it. And America didn't used well. Anyway,
No,
it didn't used to.
Well, we were uptight about it, but in a different way. There were some things that are accepted. Now, this is actually an area
something I want to talk. Well,
go ahead.
Well,
do you have a story?
Well, there's. What I want to talk to you guys about was the morality, and this plays into it. The morality of false accusations.
Oh.
Okay.
I have something that plays into that.
Okay, so
we'll go with that. I'll just say as a teaser, we will get to this, but historically, sort of the counter to biblical idea of creation, God made us, has been this neo-Darwinian, but originally Darwinian evolutionary concept of mankind. We evolved from lower species. And if you look at the history of racism that has sparked within the United States, I mean, we used to put black people in zoos in New York City because they were seen as the lower on the evolutionary scale.
Right, yeah.
And that wasn't Christians doing it. That was the secular, materialist, Darwinian
And who helped
people.
end slavery? Was it Christians?
Yeah, that doesn't matter. Don't get
Christians,
that. Yeah. But anyway, so we'll get into that topic because it's actually, I've been doing a bunch of reading on it lately, so it connects to a lot of this other studies that I'm doing. But it's just a scary topic. But that's just sort of a teaser. We're going to get to that, but I don't want to take away from...
No, it just pops up. I was actually going to print some things out on it.
Especially if there's a story
and you're familiar with this, but we can recount the issue of the morality of
fake news.
The morality of a false accusation. Which is different than fake. I mean, you remember the football player 6 years ago,
right?
College student
Brian. I can't remember his name.
And he was falsely accused by a woman of rape. Right? He was put in prison for it. He was found guilty in the court of law, and then the police or someone very astute kept up with that gal, the accuser.
Oh, I remember this coming out.
And then it came out where she posted, I think, on Facebook or public social media somewhere. Like
this is recent. This is like a month ago, right?
Yes, it's very.
So there's another one.
Oh no! It was a football player, and she just a month ago.
No, this is new. I didn't even hear this one.
Oh, you did? Oh, the football player. Yeah, this poor guy. He was up. I don't know if he's a running back, but he was going to go in the first round high, like the top 10, and he was put in prison for 6 years. It came out that she lied about it, and some people knew it, but they couldn't prove it. He was already found guilty, and she put it on her social media. Yeah, I lied about
Facebook. That. Yeah, she made it up.
Does this just happen?
Yes, it did.
Last month.
Yes.
No way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought you knew about.
I didn't know about that.
And so the guy has been released from prison, but his life is ruined. I mean, he has more life, but you know what? His football chances, NFL,
his career, the money he could have made. Is
now
gone.
That also here. How about the NAACP member and pastor who accused the cop of certain things?
Okay. Oh yeah.
And saying about drugs and taking this or whatever, and he went a leader in his community, and then the police say, "Well, here's the video of the entire exchange." The pastor lied about it. So now my question to you:
because there's an article that just came out today. Before you get the question, that new studies show that body cameras can violate people's civil rights
by showing the truth. Yeah. So but the point is, what about the morality of false accusations?
And there's been two women who one accused the police officer of being racist toward her. Another one accused her of rape. And the body camera shows that neither one of them happened.
Yeah, he wasn't interested in you. Sorry.
It's very. This goes into this topic that's just been bandied around. The NAACP pastor. The video is out in his parish and his community. The NAACP group that he's responsible to knows that there's a video out there that shows that he's lying. But guess what they said? They refuse to look at it. They're going to take his word for it.
And truth no longer matters.
But here's what it does. Because here's
to them,
to them.
Right.
But here's I think the interesting thing about it is all these folks that are making these accusations. Can you imagine if there were no body cameras first?
Oh, right. That'd be a real problem.
It'd be absolute, and so there were no body cameras in the first place. The question that I started thinking about earlier today about this similar topic is, what goes into the mind or the worldview of the person who would make up a false accusation that would destroy someone else's life?
Financial profit. In many cases.
Sure.
Somebody might just be emotionally and mentally disturbed.
Or
there's a lot.
Or they're just angry
or they
people
want
and they just don't care.
Advance an agenda. Or maybe in the past they were wronged legitimately and they figured this is the way to make it right.
To get even.
But what should happen to these people? Should they NAACP NAACP
they should all go to jail.
What about the gal who brought that false accusation?
They should all go to jail. They should. They should all go to jail. Maybe I'm not saying for years, but they should all go to jail.
It seems like there's, at least on some level, there's I don't want to say tribalism going on.
Right.
My tribe,
yes,
my group is more important than your group.
That is exactly right.
And this leads back to actually what you talked about there. Where does the value of that tribe come from?
That's exactly the significance culturally is this, and this is important, between the worldview now advanced, between a lot of civil rights, social justice things. The undergirding philosophy underneath that is sort of a neo-Marxism that the value is in group identity, not individual identity. The individual has no value only except that they belong to a certain group.
And as soon as you step outside that group, you can be sacrificed.
Or even individuals inside the group can be sacrificed for the greater good of the whole group.
Right. And this reminds...
So that's... Now, contra that, the Christian worldview that says dignity and value and sacredness is a part of the individual, and as that individual becomes a part of a group, they can sort of they can share in some of that value in a group identity, but ultimately the value only rests within the inherent sacredness and
they
value.
Enjoy the value
is within the individual.
Right.
So I can associate with, say, people based like King. Martin Luther King. So he'd say, he was fighting for justice for blacks who were oppressed and had laws against them. But the value still was inherent in him. He had his own sacred value given by God. It wasn't in a group identity, although he fought for that group to have, respect, but not as a group per se, but only because the individuals who made up the group were worthy of that value. Now it's that outside of a Christian worldview, there is no value in the individual. The value is only in the group. And the group has value who's in power, out of power. Therefore, balancing and fighting for power is how you achieve dignity.
What's interesting about it is, it reminds me when we were kids and we would play different neighborhoods in sports. If a foul happened on our side, we didn't see it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The other team would fight to get this foul call. We all know that it was a foul. But because our goal is to win...
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the one that acknowledged, that was legit.
We don't want that guy on our team.
Yeah.
That guy, no.
I did that when I was a kid a couple times.
We don't want that guy on our team. Because because you're militating...
Like your church.
I know, right?
But think about it.
Wow,
you're militating against the group's values, which is to win.
Right.
And this is the same thing. All these people that we talked about here, their appeals immediately go to video. They immediately go to the larger group to say, look at this wrong that happened to me.
Yeah.
And they do that because they know the people on their side are going to unquestionably agree that, yes, because this happens everywhere in the world, you were wrong. Even though there's video out there that proves the opposite, we're still going to fight for the group values.
I think a decade ago, maybe now, I don't know how long ago it was, I wrote a couple posts in series. Both were basically When Ideology Trumps Truth. It's on the same website, morethancake.org, where we post the off-the-cuff stuff.
That's interesting.
Nice how I worked that in. But, When Ideology Trumps Truth, and one of those was an episode that happened on Oprah, where she had an author come on. He was talking about his spiritual journey, blah, blah, blah. It was exposed that all his story was made up.
Right.
Everything was false.
Right.
And it all came out. And Oprah's response, you remember what her response was?
No.
Her response was, well, it doesn't matter if the facts are not true. The story itself is still valid.
Oh, can I chime in on that?
Yeah.
There's a famous book that if you... And I can't even believe...
Bible?
No.
Yeah, well, that is a famous book.
But there's this famous
Excellent
book...
job. I won't give you a zero on that.
Sunday school answer.
There's a famous book that
Other
they've
than the
made
Bible.
movies about. The Bible, no.
Yeah.
But they've made movies about.
Oh, I know,
and
yeah.
from this book, all of the black studies in colleges came about. Roots.
Yeah, movie Roots.
The movie Roots. The author Alex Haley stole the story from a Jewish guy.
Really?
Yeah.
And listen,
Oh, man.
he was caught, went to court, had to pay, I think, $5.2 million, if not more, for plagiarism, for stealing the story of Roots from this Jewish guy. Don't believe me. Guess how the newspaper, and I can remember this article, guess how the newspaper played it up. Famous Maryland author settles plagiarism suit.
They didn't put the headline it.
They did not headline
Author of Roots.
Author of Roots settles plagiarism suits. So all this angst and all this stuff, but guess what? The people who agreed with the studies and everything, they said the same thing.
Yeah.
Even though the facts might be wrong, the story itself is more.
Yeah, the story
valuable.
itself is more important.
And
You get
that
this
is-
in the Christian.
that
Let's
is totally
tie
roots.
this to the Christian world too, because I think when we look at the Scripture, this is also what matters in our theology as well. Because I had a friend I went to seminary with, who's since sort of stepped away from a lot of his belief. But we had this debate years ago about the resurrection. And he's of the opinion, as many are, that it doesn't matter if it happened historically. It's the point that it tells a story, and that story gives me inspiration. That story motivates me. So whether it's historical or not doesn't really matter, because I live a better life and I'm a better person because of the story that it tells. And so you have that same mentality amongst Christians, that the facts don't matter. It's that you're telling a narrative. It's a story. It's beautiful.
But the problem with that is that someone can come along and give you a better narrative. The Bible doesn't leave you with a choice. Paul said, if this didn't happen, we above all men are to be most pitied. If this didn't happen, Paul is not leaving you a choice to make this into a great feel-good thing. Paul is saying you got to believe it hook, line, and sinker, buddy. Because if it didn't happen, then we're
It allows you to be selective, obviously.
Yeah.
And I won't name the person. There's a relative of mine on social media who's doing this with Scripture.
Yeah.
A couple of them they're going through and they're quoting a lot of the love passages. Jesus said, "Love this, love, love, love."
All you need is
And
love.
all you need is love, basically. And
I'm sure Jesus said that.
and so
he sang it.
He
sang it. I've heard the recording.
Everybody had to sing
You've heard the recording. And so
He had to sing it.
so yeah, they're just quoting those. And
Jesus was a member of the Beatles?
what's being
Wow.
and what gets pointed out to that person by a friend of mine, I don't
Ringo
get in
and
very
Jesus.
much because they won't talk to me on these issues, but bless their hearts. But it is a matter of hey, look, Jesus also addressed. Well, I got on one issue. Jesus also addressed other issues. For instance, salvation is only through Him when they denied it. And it's that's not what Jesus said. Jesus actually said this as well, and they won't engage that. It's simply a disengagement. So it depends on your version of Christian. These are non-Christians who claim to be Christian.
Because the facts don't
Why,
matter.
Ward,
It's
you're a
what-
stickler. You're a stickler on this truth thing, aren't
I
you?
am.
Yeah, it's what parts impacts
Truth
you
is a
that
stickler.
matters.
You're
Yeah.
just a stickler on this truth thing, huh?
Ward.
All the rest of us get to live in our own fictional fanny lands, but Ward, he
There
wants to drag us into
there I
the
am to
truth.
break a puppy's leg and also
Yeah.
stomp on your truth. Huh?
Yeah, and he will do that.
Because he
puppies-
has.
To be fair, it was my 4-year-old daughter, so watch out for her.
No puppies were harmed in the making of
Yes.
this. I show a video clip in my ethics class.
Of Ward breaking a puppy's leg?
We're breaking your puppies like that would be a great video, but no. It's actually an old clip from Star Trek, The Next Generation, and there's a clip in this where Worf, who's a Klingon for those that don't know, is disturbed because a guy was claiming to be this prophet Kalis, who was pointing to their god, that Kalis would come back and he would save them. So within their religious system,
And Worf thought it was.
It was sort of by analogy the coming of Christ.
Right.
As a Christian, the coming of Kalis, so to
Right.
speak. So this guy's, I am Kalis, and Worf discovers this guy's not Kalis.
Right.
And this guy Kalis is speaking on this big dialogue between them, and Kalis says to him, Worf, does it really matter if I'm Kalis or if I fulfill this? As long as I've given hope to the hearts of all these Klingons, as long as I've given them, this passion for our faith and to be Klingon, blah, blah, isn't that all that matters? And of course, Worf eventually says, yeah, I guess that's really all that matters, is that I believe. Just that I believe is what matters, not that the substance of my belief has any point.
So it's all
truth.
Intellectual. The reality of it doesn't matter.
So that's, in the 90s.
And that's how you can disconnect it from morality.
And that's where our
it's like
world
Gnosticism.
gets at.
It's like Gnosticism.
Yeah, it's our world gets it today. I mean,
Right.
that's been taught to a generation of people. That's why it's so,
It's the ideal or the ideas that matter, not the reality of it.
Yes.
Therefore, I can destroy your body because you don't agree with my ideas.
What's very interesting, I think in 1977, a scientist came out with a concept called the noble lie. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
There was a big scientific conference, and one of the guys got up on and proffered this whole thing of a noble lie. And the noble lie was meant to give people's life meaning, because there is no God out there, and there is no, overarching theme that we all can agree with. So what he posited is that we all need to give ourselves our lives meaning in the moment. And he posited, and it's called the noble lie.
Yeah.
And as I sat and thought about it, I was like, well, why can't I just believe that Jesus, existed? Not that it's a lie, but if you're going to call it a lie, why is that the one noble lie, so to speak, for the sake of argument?
Well, why can't the noble lie be, black people need to die?
No, I know what you mean.
Well, why can't the noble lie be that Jews need to die?
Why can't it be that whites need to die?
Or
dwarves need to die?
Or puppies need to have their legs broken.
Right.
Because
exactly.
Because it can be anything.
Right.
It can be anything. And this is the whole point. This is the whole point. Even today, I was going to talk about.
I'm not going to get flagged now on YouTube when we load this up later. Is there a keyword search for breaking puppies' legs? And Peter's gonna,
I know
that's going to be the one thing that gets
us in trouble. But the thing is, people on this view, people can posit their life to mean anything that they want, because as truth isn't really what's up to be debated. And it's just how we feel.
And there's no way to counter it according to them. However, if you come up with a noble lie that's different than them, they will say you're wrong, objectively.
Right.
Yeah. So they will appeal to a relative morality until you cross them, then it becomes objective.
Because let's assume for the sake of argument that there really is no God. And if there's no God, then there really is nothing to anchor right and wrong. Right and wrong is whatever I feel. Think about it. If there's really nothing out there to which we have to refer to, not even reality, you could tell me the sky is blue all day long. I'm going to tell you it's black because that's what I want it to be.
Right.
How can you?
And if you lived in Seattle, that would be true most of the year.
How could you defeat that argument other than to kill me?
Right.
Or to persuade me.
That's it.
Power or pleasure
Yeah.
are the only responses on that view, and that's sadly where.
And that's exactly, and therein lies the problem where we're at. Kind of bring this full circle, and even with the Facebook thing that I started with, that's why it becomes so important as Christians that we are careful that our words don't just reflect our emotional state, that the words we craft reflect our emotional state, but rooted in a truth that exists outside of just our feeling for the moment. Because we're conveying something to the world out there, and that something needs to be aligned with the person of God and the nature of God and in accordance with the scripture that he's given us. And if it doesn't, if we're willing to give ourselves a pass, then
we have to give other people a pass.
We have no foundation to correct others for their error of not recognizing reality. That our knowledge, our truth, must correspond to reality, or it is not knowledge. It is not truth. There is no such thing as the my truth kind of.
Speak your truth.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
Right.
Yeah, and that becomes all these topics become so important for us because of that. If we don't learn to do it, and I got trouble this week a little bit. And I know our time is almost up here, but I posted on the blog this thing about when Trump called the MS-13 gang members, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're animals."
Well, people, I'm sure they took you to task on that one.
Yeah, and everyone's upset because, he called all immigrants. Well, I said, look, he didn't call all immigrants animals. He called MS-13 gang members animals. I still think that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I still argue that from a Christian worldview, which Trump does not have, it's wrong because that's a sort of a neo-Darwinian worldview that somebody can be subhuman.
Right.
Because what we do doesn't make us human. Their actions don't take away their humanity. Mm-hmm. They don't take away their sacredness. So, yes, what they do is still wrong and evil, but that's different than saying they're not human.
And what we need to do in this season is we need to be able to distinguish. I mean, we need to understand, let's say, Trump's sentiment, which is to devalue these people for what it is that they've done. We need to try to understand that and actually raise it up, to a more biblical perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's okay. If he's using the term animal to be a figurative speech, like
or adjectively,
that's different. Because, like Christ said about the Pharisees, you brood of vipers.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying ontologically you are a brood of vipers to degrade
Although
them.
he said that multiple times, said they are animals, and he said,
right, but he doesn't mean that. He meant that morally. It was a moral thing. So
I understand.
So there, as you know, there would be the figure of speech. We want to be able to allow for
cultural
that.
context. We have to take that into consideration. And
sure,
I agree with what you're saying, that there's a figure of speech, there's an analogy,
and there's authorial intent, and if his intent is to.
And I don't know all that, but except that I do know that culturally, because you have a worldview by many that say we're nothing more than animals. Peter, a pig is a dog is a boy.
Right.
Ingrid Newkirk.
To use that as an analogy,
there's some slippery slide there. It
becomes problematic within this specific cultural context, and because of that, I would argue that it's not good to use that because it's so misleading within the cultural context.
At the same time, for those who hold an evolutionary viewpoint, aren't we just animals anyway?
Well, that's exactly.
So there really is. It's ironic that they would complain the most. It should be, Christian, if there's going to be a problem. Yeah. So they really have no basis for a complaint anyway.
Yeah.
So, but
that's the framework that I say. It's. Yeah. I understand that historically, and I don't actually know what Trump meant because he's not very eloquent when he speaks.
Well, it's hard.
And you look at him again. He just said yesterday in his thing, these people are animals. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not saying their actions are animalistic. He's not saying morally they're acting like animals.
Probably what he
meant.
It
still may mean it. I don't know. I can only evaluate again his words.
Right. The big fear is that when you dehumanize people, is that you're dehumanizing them for a reason to treat them as less than human. That's the real fear, because that's exactly what's happened in the past. But you have to be honest. There's like no chance. I mean, does anybody in America think? Well, maybe there are a few people that if we captured MS-13 people, that we're going to summarily execute them all. That is not going to happen. Right. Even though some people want it to happen, that is not going to happen in America. It just in a third world country, I suppose.
We'll have to continue this, but I do think that there is a chance actually that could happen because the culture is so toxic, because of the way we take. I mean, you look at people now. Cops are pigs. All the statements about cops, and then you saw, a bunch of them being shot now because there's a sense of they deserve it. They treat us a certain way. The culture is so toxic. I think we do have to be
afraid of that.
Unfortunately, fearful about that terminology because maybe 30 years ago we'd all understand culturally. There'd be an understanding that is an analogy. It's not real. That they're still human beings. I don't think we have that discerning
people
switch
anymore. People are in default to an error rather than hear what's being said. They will default to a mistake no matter what.
I think
there's some of that. I think we can agree.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have to get back to that. We got to close up. Again, next week we'll be back. 2 p.m. West Coast time.
Right.
Wednesday.
And
we'll all have wonderful things to share.
That's right.